Hello and welcome to the BYU Library Family History webinar series. I'm glad you could join us today. I'm Megan Smith and I'll be your host for this webinar. Today's webinar will be a pre-recorded session, so there will be no Q&A session at the end of the presentation. However, you are welcome to email the presenter, Clotilde Yap, with any questions you have. Her email will be shown at the end of the webinar. Our next webinar is on October 8th with Marilyn Thompson. She will be giving a presentation entitled AI has opened court records. Know what these records are and how to use them in genealogical research. If you would like to access a previous webinar, please visit our webinar index on our website or search on our YouTube channel. All of our webinars are recorded and uploaded by the following Monday for your convenience. We also post links to recordings and other updates on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. For today's webinar, we are pleased to hear from Clotilde Yap, who will be talking about new ways to search Chinese ancestors with My China Roots. Before we begin, here's a little bit about our speaker. Clotilde Yap is the Global Collections Manager at My China Roots. Clotilde speaks Chinese, French, and Spanish, and spends her time researching untapped archives of Chinese communities around the world. Now we'll play the presentation from Clotilde.
Thank you, Megan, and welcome everybody to this quick refresh webinar on new ways to search for Chinese ancestors with My China Roots. I'm Clotilde. This is my second time doing a webinar for BYU, so you can find also my first video on the Family History Center webpage. So today I'll just be introducing a few introductory features, a few new features that we've introduced in the last year or so that you can now use through the My China Roots Library edition. Before I dive in, I just wanted to recap how you can find My China Roots. So if you are a BYU student or faculty member or visitor, then you can access My China Roots by looking for it under the BYU library resources, specifically databases. You can filter them by letter. Just look for My China Roots. And when you click on it, you'll be prompted to enter your student or your university login. And then you'll have full access to the whole thing. So we are a genealogy database for individuals or researchers who are looking for Chinese ancestors, specifically Chinese immigrant ancestors. And we now have over 8 million searchable records of Chinese overseas ancestors, plus some 200 million names searchable in our Chinese materials. So as I mentioned, if you would like to get a proper breakdown of exactly how to use the resource and what is available, then you can view this old YouTube recording, which is from about a year ago, where I go through everything in a lot more detail. Today, I'll just be talking about some newly introduced features. Okay, so I'm going to now share my other screen, which will show you what you would see when you open the My China Roots database. As you may remember from my first video, it is pretty straightforward to use and looks a lot like other genealogy databases. You can search by name, first and last name. The main difference is that we hold a lot of Chinese language materials as well, and you have the option to search in English or in Chinese. So what can you do differently now? We've added a lot of advanced search features. So this means that, traditionally, let's say you are researching a Chinese American individual called William Kwan, who lived, say, in California in the early 1900s. If you click search, this will yield 20 results for this person's name, William Kwan. If I select one of these matches, just to show you what that looks like. So one of the challenges in Chinese genealogy is the difficulty in tracking and tracing names and how names are spelled across the years. It's very typical for Chinese ancestors to have more than one name, either aliases or just different ways of spelling their surname. Now, in My China Roots, you can look up a lot of surname information. For example, on this census record of a William Kwan, in 1940, if I click on his surname Quan, Quon, um, I can learn more about this particular surname, including related spellings, which are Guan with a G, Quan with a K, um, and many others. And here is the Chinese spelling of this surname as well. Now, to keep in mind these discrepancies and these different alternative spellings, we have since added in the search functionality a way to include similar sounding surnames. So, not just surnames, first names as well. So in my search, if I select advanced next to the filters, I can choose to include in my search results similar last names as well as this Quan spelled Quon. Then if I click search, this should increase the number of matches. In fact, it's increased them a lot to over 1,000 results for William Quan. So this is the first big change that we've made to increase the scope of the types of results that people can get and to make sure that nothing is falling through the cracks. Now, the other thing that we've added that is essentially the same as what you might find on Ancestry.com, but I personally use a lot more now that we've implemented it, and that is the ability to search for relatives with your query. So let's say I'm searching for a William Quan and I know that his father's name was Loy Quan. Then I can search for them both. So under William, I can scroll down to the family member section and search for him alongside a parent. Now, what this does is it will search for a match that mentions both individuals on the same record. And that really excludes a lot of noise. And probably what you will end up with is going to be a census match. Now, if I click search, I see I have one result for a William Quan who was born in 1920, living in Los Angeles. And if I click on this match, I can see indeed that it has found a father called Loy Quan alongside other relatives, Zhou Si Quan, etc. So this is, I would say, one of the more powerful tools that I recommend starting with if you're trying to narrow down your results to find the most relevant ones. Now I'm going to go back to my search, and this time I'm going to search for, let's say I'm interested in learning more about this Loy Quan, the father of William Quan. And I will show you some other interesting features that we have added since last year. Now, amongst the materials that we have on My China Roots, alongside census records, passenger lists, we also have a collection of Chinese exclusion materials, which I go into some depth also in my first webinar. Now, let me find an example that has an image so you can see what I'm talking about. When I filter by Chinese exclusion records, I see that there are different categories. I'm interested in the case files. These case files were kept traditionally at the National Archives, and some have been scanned also and are available on My China Roots, such as this one, which is for a Loy Quan, and his case file is from Los Angeles, which matches the individual that I was researching. Now, if I want to take a closer look at this record, and this is the case for any document that you find on My China Roots, you could either open it in the original site if it was taken from another website or is hosted on another platform, or you could view it directly in the My China Roots viewer. So I've clicked View in Original Record. And now I can browse the different pages that are within this case file. Now, Chinese exclusion case files were kept during the Chinese exclusion period when the act was in effect. And you can typically find in a case file different types of documentation. You can find statements from the individuals that are essentially there to prove that they are allowed to stay in the US. You can also find testimony of other witnesses, signatures, photographs, and other accompanying materials, affidavits, transcripts of interviews also. I believe this one is the transcript of an interview with someone who is um, essentially putting in a good word for Kwan Loy. Now, let's say you want to transcribe the information because you want to take notes, or um, you want to just store this information in your own files. We've added a text extractor tool that works inside the viewer that allows you to grab any text that you see on the page. This works in English and in Chinese. So let me demonstrate. Here in the top right-hand corner, you see there is a black text extract button. If you click on it, you can then drag your mouse over any part of the page that you want extracted. And then select extract, this extract button again, and it will then process your snippet and give you a transcription. Now, a few things to keep in mind. This relies on two possible OCR software. So if you're not too happy with the result or it's formatted a bit strangely, you can switch to Google OCR instead of Baidu OCR. This yields pretty much the same result in this case. And if it's Chinese text, you can even grab a translation. And I'll show you how this works in a second. A few things to keep in mind if you're using this tool is that it works best, of course, on printed text, even though it does work on handwritten text. But if there are a lot of grids or shadows or other shapes or lines interfering with the letters, then the OCR can't work as effectively. So you might have more challenges if there's a lot of overlap. But this is a tool that I use all the time as well. It's super useful, super powerful. Now, I also want to demonstrate how this works in Chinese because a lot of our users are also not Chinese literate, and this is where it becomes really helpful. So I'm going back to my search results for Loy Kwan, and this time I'm going to filter. I want to look at death records. So I can see there's a tombstone. There's also a burial record. This is for a woman, Loy Kwan. But there is some information in Chinese. So I'm going to click on it, and I see that it is a burial register from a Chinese funeral parlor. This was kept in 1929. Now, if I again view in the original record, I can zoom into the image. Now I'm going to look for this Loy Kwan person, even though I know she is not the same person that I'm looking for. So she's listed here, Kwan Loy Fong, widow probably of a Fong Zhang. It has a bit of information about her, and it has a note in Chinese right next to her name. Now I don't know what it says, so I'm going to use the text extractor tool again, this time dragging it only over the Chinese characters, and I'm going to see what it says. So this time it is processing. And the great thing about the Chinese language tool, the Chinese extractor tool, is that it can also recognize if text is meant to be read right to left, left to right, and will order it correctly for you. In this case, it is written top to bottom and right to left. Now the first line is, oh, let me get a translation. So I select show translation. These are places. So Nanhai in Zhejiang in Nanhai is a town. And then the Xinyong, translated as society or she, is also a place name inside this Zhejiang area. And then the last line says Fengmen Guo clan. So this mentions that she is of this clan. In this case, the Chinese characters for the last line have not been perfectly extracted, but almost. Feng refers to her maiden name, and Guo refers to her married name, even though it should be Guan. But the characters look quite similar when they're handwritten. So with just one wrong character out of just under 10, it's pretty good. Um, so going back to my platform. Now, similarly to what I've just demonstrated, you can also use the text extractor tool with materials that you yourself have on hand. So let's say you are researching an ancestor and you have a tombstone photograph or you have a handwritten note. Both of these can also be uploaded to My China Roots to have the text extracted and to then search for that text. So, how would you go about doing this if you have your own material, your own screenshot or photograph? You can navigate to resources in the top menu, then select image to text. This is the image to text extractor. Then select an image from your device. I'm going to choose a tombstone that I was looking at just earlier. Wait for it to upload, and then you can decide what you want extracted on the image. By default, it will just try to extract everything inside the image, but then you can go back inside and reselect if you need. So this is a tombstone of a woman called Yi Kong. Now, by default, it's just gotten the full translation, the full transcription, including the dates and the name in English, but I could also go back in to highlight it. Now, if I wanted to get a translation, you can tell already there's a lot more information in Chinese than in English. In English, you just have the dates and this person's name. But in Chinese, for some reason, there is a lot more text. And that is because it is tradition on a Chinese tombstone to include more information, including the birthplace or the ancestral place of the person. So the Chinese inscription reads, it lists her birthplace, which is Huixin village in this area of Guangdong. Then it says, this is the tomb of Madame Huang Yu Cai Yue. And her name is also a lot longer because it includes her married name alongside her maiden name, plus her birth date and her death date. And it does not just include her um, birth year and death year, but also the exact date. So this is a great reason if you are conducting some kind of Chinese genealogy research to try to obtain tombstone photographs of ancestors wherever possible. Now, I just want to show you what I can do also with a name that is just handwritten, which is yet another level for this. So I'm going to upload another image, which let's say someone scribbled it down and sent it to me and tells me this is the name of your great-grandfather. So I don't read Chinese, but I can get the characters from this image. It's managed to translate them perfectly. In fact, if I get a translation, this is not necessarily very helpful because it is, in fact, just a name. It says Guan Guocong. Now, this Guan is the same surname as the Loi Quan that we were looking at earlier. And in fact, this is a good time to mention one of the key sort of practices when it comes to Chinese ancestral names, and that is to always place the last name in front of the first name when introducing oneself or when recording names in any kind of document. So it is typical in Chinese and in China to always state your last name first. In my case, if I was to introduce myself using my Chinese name, I would start with my last name, Yap, and then say my first name, which is Mei Ling. Mei Ling is my Chinese first name. So here, Guan is the first name, and Guozong, the last two characters, are the first name. So what if I want to search for this name? Now I can copy paste those three characters and search for Chinese materials on My China Roots. Now, most of our Chinese materials are the Zupu or the family tree books. Again, if you want to learn more about these records, then do check out my other webinar that I did for BYU. But here is where I would search for a name in Chinese to access the Chinese materials. Now, I've copy pasted the full name, but really I just want the first name listed here. And oh, it remembers my search, and I copy paste the last name, which was also on that screenshot, on that handwritten screenshot. I select the correct match. Here it replaces it just with the simplified version of the script, which is exactly the same. And now I click search, and I see there is one match in a family tree book. This is a family tree book from Kaiping for the Guan family, published in 2018. And I can see that the name has been found. It's highlighted and listed in yellow on this section here. If I click examine matches, I can see exactly where the name appears on the page, where the match has taken place. And I can even use the dictionary, the pop-up dictionary, to get a translation of what is on the page. So this was a very short overview, but I think demonstrates some of the new things that you can do through My China Roots, mostly with image to text translation and with some of the advanced search features. There is one last thing that I did want to show you, and that is we have recently introduced an AI search tool. So if you're not sure about the results that you're getting, if you're not sure which filters exactly to apply, and you want to access the results quickly, then you can always use this AI search, and you can type in anything in here. You can type any kind of question. It can be related to records, or it can be related to a translation. For example, in the case of the tombstone that I just uploaded to get a transcription, the lady's name was Yi Kong, right? So let's imagine I'm trying to find out what a possible translation for Yi could be. I could ask the search, what is a possible Chinese translation for the surname Yi? I give it a few seconds to run the query, and it should be able to search for this surname through the database. And if I click search here, it shows me and brings me to the Yi Chinese last name page, where I can see, okay, what is the surname about? What are related surnames? What are associated dialects? And what are possible translations? So it doesn't answer my question directly, but it brings me to the page where I can get the answers. So this is one way of using it. Another way could be to ask a question about a specific person. So, for example, I'm researching my great grandmother, Yi Kong, who lived in Los Angeles, for example. I could even add a date range if I wanted to, but I'll just leave this like that for now. I press search, and it should generate a search query based on my inputs. Just give it a few seconds. Usually it doesn't take quite this long, but of course, every time I do a live demo, it seems to be slower than usual. And here are my results. I have a few, one for an Eva Yi, also known as Kong. Here is another Yi Kong match, and yet another also for Los Angeles. So this is how you can use the AI search. Of course, in some cases, it might not quite understand your query. The more text you add, the more complex the query, and the more likely it is that the AI hallucinates a little bit or doesn't include every single filter. So we have some tips listed there for, how to write an effective AI search query, but you can always go in afterwards and refilter whatever is presented to you. So that's it. That was a very quick overview of new ways that you can search with My China Roots. Do feel free to email me if you have questions or you get stuck using the resource. We always love to hear from you. My email address is just listed on the bottom of this slide. And thank you for watching.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you will join us for our next webinar on October 8th with Marilyn Thompson. A recording of this webinar will be made available by next week. You can view that on our YouTube channel or our website. If you have any comments or questions, you can always email us at fh_webinars@byu.edu or follow Facebook and Twitter. Thank you and have a wonderful week.